Hope, Kuroko, Mwanguzi, can I hear something from you? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, I want to hear from them in terms of the themes they have covered so far under poetry. It will give me a very good guiding position.
Yeah, it's fine. Go ahead and ask them to unmute. Tap on them and ask them to unmute.
Please unmute, unmute.
Village life.
You've reached village life.
Yeah, and love.
And love.
Yeah.
Okay, so we shall refer to both poems. We shall refer to both themes because I want us to revise the aspects that are under poetry. I want to be able to remind you so that when we are discussing poetry, we are well versed with those aspects. Are we together?
Yes. Yes, we are.
Okay, so I want to begin from those aspects. Most times we might refer to them as examinable aspects, but also they are what makes up poetry. Some of those are a title. I'm going to be asking you to define some of these things as a way of knowing what they are. Are we together?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So looking at the different poems you've looked at, I know you have looked at the titles, but we in literature we have the last section, which is number 5. Usually, we examine what we call poems. We have the unseen poem and the seen poem. I'm sure when you start your classes, by the time you reach senior 4, they would have made for you a difference, but I will try to give you a highlight of what they are. So usually we can give you a poem with its title and everything. Then we examine certain things like what is the theme or what is happening, what is the subject matter. So I want us to remind ourselves of those. When we talk about the title of a poem, a title is like a name. You and me have names. What is the importance of a title to a poem? In simple language, you can say a title is a summary of what the poem is about. For example, have you read Amanda? Which poems under love have you read? My students, this is going to be a very interactive session, so feel free to unmute and tell me any poem under love that you remember.
Lullaby by Aga Khan.
Lullaby, yes, by Aga Khan, that is good. What is in that poem is summarized in the title. Are we together?
Yes.
So when you're reading poetry, please do not forget the title. A poem of a title is what enables us. It's the first interpretation or a first insight we have into what we call a poem. For example, in Uganda, they normally name people according to their clans, but each name, most times they say, we resemble our names or we behave like our names. So I want you to know that a title in a poem is considered very important and we should never ignore. Just like we are able to divide these poems and say there are poems that fall under love, there are poems that fall under village life. Some of these poems can give you a hint that it falls under love or it falls under village life. So a title is one of those things we look at clearly under poetry. The other aspect I'm going to ask us to look at is the poet. Who is a poet? Class?
He's the writer of the poem.
Is the writer of the poem. So every poem has a poet. So because we also ask you in the unseen poem, a teacher can give you a question that I identify one poem from the theme of love and tell us, they will tell you to identify the poem and the poet. So the title and the poet, you must always make sure that in every aspect, in every theme, under love, you must get your poem. Master the poem, master also the poet. Those two are very, very important. For example, someone was talking about lullaby. Who wrote lullaby?
Akan.
Akan. Yes, so you need to know such things. And Amanda? So you need to be able to get them. And under Village Life, which poem do you remember? Village Life, theme Village Life. Mwanguzi, say something.
The poor man.
Pardon?
The poor man.
Is that the poet? Or you're reminding me of you're reminding me the title of a poem. Eh?
Yeah, in Village Life.
The Poor Man. Which other one? African Thunderstorm.
Thunderstorm.
Yes, have you read it?
Yes.
Yes, at the end of this poem, at the end of this session, I'll ask you at least to tell me a poem and a poet. So be able to give me at least a list of 3 or 4 poems with their poets, because I want us to just be familiar with the language that we use under these poems. Are we together? Yes. Now, we also have a speaker or the speaking voice. It's also called the persona. Who can be able to tell us who is the speaker or the speaking voice or the persona? What is it? Yes, class, who is the speaker?
Is the person speaking in the poem.
A person speaking in?
The person speaking is the speaker.
The person speaking is the speaker. Most times students confuse the speaker and the poet. Now in poetry, most times we ask you, who is the speaker or who is the persona? Now in every poem, are we together? There is every author or every poet rather passes his message. There's a difference between a poem, the poet and the speaker, in that a poet simply writes, but a poet can choose who to speak for him in his poem. And now that speaker is best determined by the subject you're writing about. Are we together? For example, if you're to communicate about maybe child abuse at school, who is the best person to use as your speaker in your poem? If you're now learning how to write a poem, who would be the best person for you to use? Yes, students?
The child.
I beg your pardon?
The child.
The child, any child?
Oh, child suffering.
That child should be part of that school. If you want to communicate, even if you are not a soldier, but you want to write about the problems faced by soldiers, the best persona to use there is a soldier. Are we together? So we always encourage and aid, because we are not just learning poetry to pass exams. I'm also trying to let you know that when you're writing your poem as a student, you can always choose the best speaker for your poem based on the subject you're writing. If you're writing about torture at home, for example, it can be told in the perspective of the child watching their parent being battered. It can be told in a perspective of a mother being battered. I don't know if you've read I'm Tired of Speaking in Metaphors by Susan Chiguri. some of those poets have been able to write about domestic violence. Are we together? In their homes, either as a child or as the woman herself. So we encourage you so much to use that. Just as a reminder, some of you have read Lullaby and we're talking about it. Who is the speaker in Lullaby? Yes, who is the speaker in Lullaby?
The mother.
A mother. How do you get to know that it's a mother? That is my next question. How do you get to know that in this poem, the person speaking is a soldier? Yes, because you need to know, these are very important questions. For you to be able to tell the subject matter, you must know the speaker or the speaking voice. They help so much for us to come up with something to discuss. So I want you to tell me, how are you able to know that in this poem it is a mother, in this poem it is a child? What about the bushman? Who is the speaking voice in the bushman? Yes, class, let us share. Students? Tibzi, I'm seeing here Tibzorikiriza. Yes, your hand is up. Unmute. Orikiriza, you are allowed? Orikiriza's hand was up, he has run away. Frank, you can say something. Hope, how do you get to tell? How do we get to tell that this person is the speaking voice? Students, are we there?
Hello.
Yes.
Well, I've just joined, but network is disturbing me.
Oh, sorry about that.
It's disturbing me since morning.
Sorry about that. Today we are looking at poetry.
Yes.
And we are trying to make sure that we remember the aspects of poetry. We looked at the title, we looked at the poet. Now we are looking at the speaker. How are you able to tell in a poem? First of all, we looked at who a speaker is. We all agreed that a speaker is that the voice or the talking voice in a poem. How are you able to tell the talking voice? That is what I wanted us to look at, because it is a question we ask. So how can you tell that the speaking voice in this poem is a child? Yes. Yes. Okay, maybe if you can hear me, I will tell you. For example, most times we are given hints. When you hear someone saying, I, now you look for that I. That is what we call a perspective of telling a story. When someone says I, it is in the singular. If you have read Atieno, sometimes they tell you direct, Atieno washes dishes. But in other poems like the Lullaby, the mother says, you are mine. Directly, the you there, you can tell that it's a mother speaking because she owns the child. She uses that possessive adjective, you are mine. So you can be able to tell that it's a caring mother. Sometimes others are direct. Someone says, we soldiers suffer this and that. So some perspectives are direct, others, they are told in the first person and the third person, where they say we, I mean they. So I in singular, we in plural. Then it, sometimes you're told it does this, it does that. Like African thunderstorm, the way it is described, you can really tell in such a way that a person is describing it, is seeing it from a distance. Are we together? Maybe it is an onlooker because of the way the person looks at the approaching wind from a distance. So those are some of the ways you can be able to tell what the speaking voice is in a poem. I know it is challenging, but through a lot of practice, you can be able to learn. So you can look at the simple ones where the person says I, or we do this, or where the person says direct. It could be a noun, it could be a pronoun, it could be maybe the first person narrative or the third person. So all those are very good. And I will always refer to Amanda and then the others. Okay. The other aspect we want to look at under poetry is a theme. What is a theme? Can I hear someone at least tell me? Caleb. Caleb, can you tell us what a theme is? Hope, Mwenda, please let's share. Tibs Orikiriza, your hand is up.
Excuse me.
Yes, Albert.
A theme is the main event taking place in a given.
A theme is the main
event taking place in a poem.
It is the main event taking place in a poem. Yes. For example, which themes have you met before?
Corruption.
Corruption, yes.
Tradition.
Corruption, which other ones?
Tradition.
Pardon?
Tradition.
Tradition. Now, sometimes those are general themes. For example, when you look at our poems, have you read growing up in poetry? Do you have it at home with you?
Yes.
Yes, if it's not very far from you, I want you to take a look at it. And we have different themes. For example, it's arranged in such a way that you have love.
Love.
You have identity.
Identity.
You have African village life, rather. You have death. Which other themes do you remember in that book?
Oh, let me go.
Separation.
Pardon?
Separation.
Cooperation?
Separation.
Oh, yes, separation. Now, so those are usually, that's how we categorize them. However, even under those themes, for example, if you look at poems under love, for example, Amanda, if you look at Amanda still, there is a theme of now particularly what we call the requited love, that love which is returned. Are we together? When you love someone and they, the unrequited love, where you love someone and they do not love you back, or what we call material love. Now, as we grow, we begin dissecting those things. For you right now, maybe you just know that in this life, there is just love. However, sometimes you can love someone and they do not love you back. Sometimes people love you because of what you have. I don't know if you've faced those things at school. People only love you when the term has just started, because your case is full, because your check at the bursar is still okay, but towards the end of the term, people no longer love you. So that's what we call material love. However, when you look at things like lullaby, which love is in lullaby? Yes, can we share? Someone had talked about lullaby, where she disappeared.
Lullaby, it's parental love.
Parental love. And all of you right now, you are enjoying that love at home. Of course, not all of us, but the majority are enjoying that parental love. So what we do in O level is to try now to open your mind to the realities of life in every theme. In every poem, we try to show you a different kind of love. Are we together? Have you read any Shakespeare's poem? Let me to the minds of, is it Lead Me Not? There's that poem. Lead me not to the minds of true lovers. Something. Pardon?
Lead me not to the marriage of true minds.
Lead me not to the marriage of true minds. In that poem, they try to tell you what genuine love is, because it tells us in that poem that love is not swept, is not overcome by time. However, when someone does not love you, when you age, they run away. But Shakespeare tells us that love is an overpowering feeling that never ends, that it stands the test of time. So I'm trying to show you that in all the themes we have, there are other types of small themes that we can derive. So don't just generalize and say it is love. The same thing, let me go back to the speaker. Don't just say a mother. Like in lullaby, what kind of mother do you have in lullaby? Yes?
She's a loving mother.
Now that is a very important word. When we are marking, we need to see that you're talking about a loving mother. In the Bushman, which kind of person, what kind of speaker do you have in the Bushman, Sheila? What kind of speaker do we have there? I speak for the bush. Have you read I Speak for the Bush?
To me, not yet.
Okay, but in those poems, when you read them, most times they try to tell us in lullaby, it is a caring mother who has dedicated her life. She does not have much, but she says, "You are mine to rear." So she does not want to give up her child. Are we together? She does everything to keep her child with her. So that is what we call a caring mother. In Amanda, we get to know that the speaker is a close friend to Amanda and Roy, because he gets to know every bit. He gets to know why Amanda is, he gets to know everything about Amanda, even things that for us we would not maybe know. Are we together? So we can say a close friend. Are we together? So never just say the speaker is a woman. Always tell us what kind of woman. There is another, of course, as you grow, there is the poem Under Identity. There is another poem where the father tells his son to teach him to behave like he used to. Those are poems of identity. So there we can say a regretful father. Do you understand? Which other poems have you read under love? The rest can also share with me so that I can use those poems, please. Albert.
I will.
Yes, My Will. Who is the speaker in My Will? Who is the speaker in My Will?
Father. A caring father.
Pardon?
A caring father.
A caring father. How do you get to know that he's a caring father? Because you have to give that reason as you grow up. We shall learn to write our essays by adding a caring father who wishes his child to do what?
To earn good friends.
Yes. So by the things he mentions, for example, he says, before he wishes his child to have the gift of music. Which other things does he wish for his child? Apart from good friends, apart from the love for music, what does he say? He says, treasure your... Beg your pardon?
Love for books.
To love books. But also he says, I want you to be grateful to God. Are we together? He wants the child to be appreciated. So with all those things, you can get to know which kind of father he is, that he's a caring and loving father who wishes his son to have the things that he did not have. Are we together? You can always unmute and say yes in case you've understood, or if you have any question. Before I continue, do you have any question between the title and the theme?
No.
Okay.
No.
So, yeah, all right, thank you. So I want you always to know that for every poem, there is a title, and in every title has a poet, or every poem has a poet who writes it. And every poem has a speaker, the person who passes on that message, the message we have looked at, which is the theme. He chooses that part. It might not be necessarily human being. How many of you are lovers of animations? Do you love animations?
Yes.
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 Yes, we all watch. Have you watched How to Train Your Dragon? If you've watched, the people who are speaking there
Yes.
are animals. But we choose to say they are the speakers in that. If it was a poem, we would say that is a speaker, or the speaking voice, or the narrator of the story. So I want us to know that. Also under themes, we say the block themes are usually love, but under love, there is something they are teaching us. Definitely. Under this, I have not added other aspects. I will also tell you to add for us more aspects under this, then we discuss them as time goes on. For example, I have not added the aspect of lessons. I would expect us to add that aspect as we discuss. Today, we shall look at generally the aspects in reference to the poems we have looked. Then tomorrow, or when we have another lesson, I will give you an entire poem or two poems. We discuss those things from the poet to the speaker and everything in there. Okay, so we shall add there lessons. Someone will be able to at least give me something under lessons. Sheila, you will give me a comment on lessons. Albert also, Hope, you'll mention something. And how do we state lessons? We shall look at that. So we have looked at the themes and learned something. What about subject matter? What is subject matter? What do you remember? Albert,
So-
Sheila, anyone? What is subject matter?
Subject matter is what they're talking about in the poem.
Mhm. Also known as what the poem is about. A teacher can sit and say, what is the subject matter? But the same teacher is asking the same thing when he says, what is the poem about? Are we together? How do you state?
Yes, we are.
Yes. How do you state subject matter? Now, most students, we mention one line and run away. But subject matter is, if you're writing somewhere, please write this definition and say, subject matter is what the poem is about. Subject matter is what the poem is about in your own words. Now for you, you'll say, in my own words. In your own words. You choose to tell us what you think is happening in the poem. Now, for short poems, you can look at line by line. For example, lullaby. You can tell us line by line what is happening in the subject matter, line by line. Or you can look at stanzas. If you look at I Speak for the Bush, African Thunderstorm, Under Village Life, Amanda, those are very long poems. So what we usually do, we look at them in terms of stanzas. I don't know if you know, that is the other thing I did not tell you. Do we know what a stanza is? Albert, anyone? I'm sorry, I'm calling one person only. Sheila, Albert, Caleb.
Yes.
Caleb, can you say
Yes,
something
yes.
about a stanza?
Stanza is a set of lines
Pardon?
that communicates. Stanza is a set of lines or verses.
So thank you. In poetry, we do not call them paragraphs. We call them stanzas, and stanzas are made up of what we call lines. So you can have maybe 4 lines making up a stanza. Are we together? So when you have, and usually how we separate stanzas is by skipping a line. So you analyze a stanza After analyzing that stanza, then you tell us what you think is happening in that stanza. So for example, if I'm to ask you, Albert, could you complete, not Albert, sorry, Caleb, if you're to tell me, for example, with the lullaby, in your own words, what do you think is happening in lullaby? Or which other poem do you know that we can use under love, the theme of love?
Let me go with lullaby because it's short and
Okay.
brief.
You like a poem which, okay, since it's short, you tell me. In your own words, what do you think is happening?
I think this loving mother is trying to express her love to a child, and she's willing to do anything for her or it, because you don't know the gender of the child.
Okay,
She's
it's
willing to
not
do anything
mentioned,
for it,
but you can either say she or he. It is okay.
regardless of her state of her, let me say, her economic state or status, maybe.
Yes.
I'll go with that.
Regardless of her status. How do you get to know that it's regardless of her status?
Well, she mentions and says that I may not have a woolen blanket to lay you on, but I will lay you on my torn mat and stuff like that.
Okay. Oh, yeah, you're paraphrasing what she says. That point, there's a point in the poem where she says, I may not have this. So she says what she does not have, or those who have this would love to have you, but you are mine. Are we together? So that is what we call, that is how we write subject matter. Now, most students have a mistake they make. That is copying and pasting what is happening by repeating those lines the way they are. Usually we say you have not understood. When we are marking, when we look at your interpretation, we shall look at the words which are used. If you can be able to explain them, we can be able to know that this person understood. So endeavor, when you're writing subject matter, to give us exactly what is happening. Are we together? Deborah here? Is she online? Teresa? And can you start then?
Sorry about that. The teacher is off, but let's wait for him to reconnect. Let's wait for him to reconnect. So meanwhile, we shall have more lessons tomorrow. Tomorrow we shall look at biology. That's at exactly 9. So tell your colleagues so that they are here in time. We shall also look at CRE. That is our day of Wednesday. Then on Thursday we shall have math and physics. Sorry, on Thursday it is only math.
Okay.
And then on Friday we shall have physics and English. So let's not miss those subjects. Inform your colleagues to always be here early in time. I normally begin the class 15 minutes to the start. So let's always be early in time. You know, the lesson is for only 1 hour. So if we join in time and we begin exactly at that time, we shall benefit much compared to when we join late.
Hello?
Anyone? Yes, you are back.
I'm
It's
still
fine.
on. Yes, sorry. Small network glitch, but here I am. I had given us something to share. Can I hear from you? I had pointed out Sheila to tell us something about the subject matter, just to remind us the subject matter and how she can state it, and then I also give you the words, some of the words we use when we are starting to state subject matter. Sheila?
Yes, teacher, you told
Could
us
you-
that about the subject matter, you meant that it means that what the poem is about, not so?
Yes, in your own words.
Yes, in my own words, I'm going to also point at lullaby.
Pardon?
I'm going to talk about lullaby.
You want to talk about lullaby? Caleb had already commented on lullaby. Okay. Maybe you can say something, you can say something.
Okay, for me, according to this poem, it's about parental love. And it's even seen in the title, about the title lullaby. When the speaker is a mother, she's using sweet words to make her baby happy. And her words give a good feeling to a baby, enough to, even though she's a poor woman. Okay, that's
Sheila.
all. Yes.
Thank you. Now, usually what I encourage, like Caleb did, if you want to be if you don't want to miss marks, or if you want to be able to get to score well by the teacher, you read, for example, when you read the first line, second line, you interpret what the poem means in your own words. You started well. I want to give us, if you're writing down, some of the ways to state subject matter. If you're taking notes, you can write this and say, ways of stating subject matter. You can start by saying, the poem is a description. You can start by saying, the poem is a description of a mother's love. That can be one way of starting to state your subject matter. The second way you can state subject matter, you can say, it is a narration. It is a narration. For example, in Bushman, so you can say it is a narration of this and that. You can also say it is an analysis. Or you can say a poem is a cry. If you look at there's a poem like, I don't know if you've looked at that poem where the character is not Amanda, but Athieno. Have you read that poem where there is Athieno does this? Athieno plucks chicken. Have you read that poem? Class, you can unmute and say yes if you have read the poem.
Yes.
Yes. Now, some of those poems you can say the poem is maybe a criticism when they are laughing, or it is a mockery of relatives. Those are different ways you can start a poem. You can start writing the subject matter. I'll be sharing others with time, but it's very important for you always to be able to at least state your subject matter in such a way that it has a hint of what the poem is about. Most times when you say the poem is about a parental love, that is okay. However, I don't want people who start by saying the poem is about a character. Usually it is not about a character, but it's about what is happening to a character. Are we together? For example, you can say it is a cry maybe the poem is about Caleb who cries out. Now, that is very important. The character is not so important, but what happens to that character or what that character does is what the poem is about. So avoid just saying the poem is about the lost girl. What is it? Now the issue is, or don't say the poem is about a girl. Say the poem is about a girl who gets lost. So let us be able to remember that always when we are analyzing. We shall be sharing different ways that we start our subject matter. But it's very, very important for us to know that subject matter is something we always examine. So I don't know if you've written that. We say that subject matter refers to what the poem is about in your own words. So usually, or you can say it is a summary. It is a summary of the poem. It is a summary of the poem written in one paragraph. It is a summary of the poem or what the poem is about written in one paragraph. I hope you know that subject matter is written in one paragraph. And it's written in what we call the indented paragraph, not lines. You don't outline what the subject matter is about. Everything in subject matter is written under one paragraph. The rest do not matter much. However, subject matter under what? And subject matter alone is very keen. Themes, you can write them in different paragraphs. However, subject matter must be written in one paragraph. Is that okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. So when you look at things like,
Yes.
all right, now we have other things we look at under poetry. For when you read a poem, there are always these feelings. Locally, we say we catch feelings. However, we get to be affected in a certain way. When you read that, Amanda, when you read Lullaby, what kind of feelings do you get? How do you feel? Anyone? How does it affect you? Prima, praise. Can you tell me, how do you feel when you read a mother expressing such love? Yes.
A feeling of love,
A feeling of love,
a feeling of anger.
a feeling of anger. Where do you get the anger?
After reading, not in the poem of Lullaby, but other poems.
Oh, you're giving me different feelings. Eh?
Yes.
Okay, I thought it would be particular. I wanted to hear from Prima. Prima, how do you usually feel when you read maybe a book or a poem, or when you watch a movie?
Feelings of sympathy towards the mother in the poem Lullaby.
Hmm.
And
Now,
in the beloved, feelings of love.
Now, how do you get there is what I'm interested in. How do you get there? Now, sometimes our feelings are guided by what is happening in the poem. However, there are certain words. Now, you boys and girls who are here, I am very sure at your age, when someone tells you you are, maybe for the girls, when someone tells you you are gorgeous, how do you start blushing immediately? You start feeling like heaven is nearer. When the boys, when someone tells you maybe my hunk is here, or my handsome man or something, there's that feeling, you feel like you already own, you already own some plots of land in Kampala. Now that feeling is based on the choice of words the person has used. So when we are reading poetry, let us not ignore certain words. When a mother says, "But you are mine," when she begins and says, "The others would like to rear you, those with cars and blankets, but you are mine." Now, for me, me and you get to realize that this mother has love that surpasses material things. That it's not just, so your feelings get to be affected because of the choice of words. So most times let's pay attention to the choice of words these people use in the beloved, in I speak for the bush, in identity. I don't know accidentally if you've read Building the Nation. Anyone who has read Building the Nation, I want to say something about it.
Yes.
I don't want to waste my example. In Building the Nation, the driver says, today I did my part. I drove my boss to a luncheon. Now that choice of word, luncheon, we know that luncheon is not actually a meeting. It is an happening thing like lunch or going to dine and feast. And yet the boss lies to us that he has gone to discuss very serious issues. He says, we're discussing issues of the state. Now, you get the feeling of anger when you hear him say that, because you get to know he's lying. So that is what we are saying, that we need to pay attention. Feelings are very important for us to master, but we shall be looking at how each of those, we can state them. Would like so much to know one thing. Want you to know that when we are writing feelings, we have positives and the negative. Are we together? There are words that describe positive feelings, and there are words that describe negative feelings. For example, when someone says a feeling of ecstasy, someone is extremely happy. Instead of just saying, I am elated, or I am excited, or I am happy, and someone says, I am maybe excited or extremely elated. Now, those are all feelings. But on the negative, someone can say, I am angered, a feeling of maybe I feel this. However, let us avoid saying, I have a feeling of this. So you can clearly state the feeling and say, maybe anger, or you can say a feeling of anger. Are we together? So you can say a feeling of anger, or you straight away tell us the feeling, maybe angry, upset, disappointed. Those are feelings. And then here, very fast, let us look at character traits. Sometimes they can ask you in a poem, for example, if I'm to ask us, what are the character traits of the mother or the speaker? What are the character traits of the speaker in the poem Lullaby? Who can be able to tell us at least one character trait?
She's loving.
A loving, loving. Which other one?
She was caring.
Loving and caring go hand in hand most times. She could be perhaps considerate. So most times, however, when we are stating our feelings, once in a while, we should be able to support them. She's loving and caring when she looks after her child with barely nothing. So that is what we can say. All right, in Amanda, we can also get to know, if you look at the character traits there, if you look at Amanda, there are so many ways they describe Amanda. We get to know that Amanda is a person who loves money. Amanda is a person who is lazy. Amanda is a person who fears challenges, so she's a coward. So all those things. However, her boyfriend, on the other hand, Troy, is a caring man, he's a considerate man, all those things are there. So it is very important. I remember I had told someone to tell us something about lessons. Lessons, I want us to discuss lessons together. Which other aspects do you usually meet under poetry? You could also be able to share with us. Yes, my class.
Relevance.
Relevance, that is now in application. Relevance of the poem to the society. Can you make a comment on it? Then I talk about it. Relevance.
About relevance, this is where you compare what is in the book, what is in the poem, and daily life. And you have to compare well enough to know what should be done right in the right way.
Okay.
Something like that.
Yes, maybe let me make more to it. Now, when you talk about relevance, when they say, what is the relevance of the poem? If someone asks you the relevance of a poem, they're always trying to tell you, what is the use of this poem? Are you learning anything from it? Do you see what is happening in this poem happening in your society? So most times that's when we say we put side by side your society and your poem. You look at your poem and say, in Lullaby, what is happening? We see a poor mother caring for her child. Do we see it in society? We see very many mothers with barely anything to feed, but they remain with their children. Are we together? They make sure their children have exactly what they maybe need or what they can afford. They do not throw away their children. They make sure their children eat the little they have. Now that is so in short, they are asking you, do you have motherly love in your society like you have in your poem? Do you have requited love? So those are the things we talk about when you talk about relevance. Is what is happening in your society happening in your novel, in your poem rather? So you look at them side by side. Yes. Which other aspect? I want us to talk about lessons. It's very important. Lessons. What is a lesson? And how do we state lessons? Yes, Albert, Caleb, say something. Yes, Orikriza?
Is what we learn from the poem.
What we learn from the poem. Now, with yes, Prema? I don't know, most of you or all of you must have learned or had someone say that literature is a moral subject. Have you heard of that? Annie?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, you've heard people say literature is a moral subject?
Yes.
Because literature teaches us a lot. Whereas most subjects, most people say, what is the relevance of literature? Just reading novels. Now, for us in literature, we say the society is only corrected through literature, because literature does not just, when you read, you are acquiring knowledge. When we apply that knowledge, all the solutions,
Teacher,
what we call them results.
Time.
Beg your pardon?
Time.
Okay, sorry about that. So lessons, usually what we learn from these poems. I'm compiling for you these notes, then we share on the Google Drive and also on the WhatsApp group. By the end of the day, I will be able to share the presentation in our WhatsApp. There's a WhatsApp group for senior threes. I want to thank all of you, Caleb, Albert, all those who have been active. Please let us make sure we are always here on time. Sorry for the delays and all the inconveniences. I'm sure with time, we shall get much better. Any questions, you can refer to our WhatsApp group. Is that okay? Yes, class?
Yes, okay.
All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Those who want the WhatsApp group, I've pasted the link in the chat. Check in the chat for the link to join the group of senior 3. Check. You've seen